Hey, hello, once again, it's time for some more weird CZN nonsense. This time we are taking a quick peek at the new unit that just dropped, Hilde. Hilde is a very unique character coming out at a very unique time, in a very unique season. She is one of 3 parts of a new seasonal block of characters who are all going to be in the Instinct combat type. We will have 3 characters that will be coming out over the course of the season, starting with Hilde, then Arabella, who will be the primary DPS, and Olga, who will be the psychic buffing, dot-wielding scythe user that comes out at the end of the season. Hilde is a very interesting ranger. She's not using guns, she's using a bow, which is also going to lead to some of her mechanics being very interesting. So we're not going to take like a super deep dive into it. Obviously, we've got other people that are going to do that for us, but we are going to take a couple of steps forward to look at some of her, I would say probably her core cards, and just kind of what she can do currently, and then we'll go from there. Let's start off with a basic look at her kit. She starts off with 2 basic attacks that are AoE, so they hit damage to all enemies, which is the second time we've had somebody who's able to do that. We've got Bow Guard, which is her shield, and then we have Quiver Reload, which is going to be one of the 2 main cards that we're going to be taking a look at. The other 4 cards that she has is Plasma Rain, Draw and Release, Big Game Ranger, and Vortex Arrow. So the cool thing about Quiver Reload, I kind of want to just get right into it, is that it is going to create a set of homing arrows. Now there, of course, like with all cards, are multiple different versions of this card that are going to be looked at. The ones that I'd like to talk about are going to be the second and the third epiphanies. The second epiphany is create 3 homing arrow fracture in your draw pile. Obviously, you've also got your possibility of hitting multiple different styles of divine, such as draw 1, reduce the cost at the start of your turn, change the cost, and move 2 exhaust cards from your discard pile to your hand. In most cases, you are most likely going to want to try to get the divine that's going to give you the ability to reduce the cost from 1 to 0, as this is going to give you the best option for if you are trying to build her as a more than just sub DPS or just a DPS in general. This gives you the ability to create 3 homing arrows with the fracture mechanic, which is this whole season's new dot mechanic, which is basically the same sort of system as other things like Scorch or Agony, where it puts a end of turn dot where it will blow up half the stacks at the end of the turn to whatever it's attached to. Now, the unique thing about the homing arrows, however, is that whenever you look at the cards, you'll notice that they have the no icon, and that of course means that they are not actually activatable in your hand normally. However, in order for you to be able to use them, they do actually have an attunement keyword that's associated with them, which means as soon as you draw it through any means, it will automatically activate the card and send it on its way, doing whatever it is that it needs to do. Now, the cool thing about this is that it uniquely designates extra attack, not whatever the percentage of normal attack or defense-based damage that you'd see with other units. You're actually getting it to specifically call out extra attack. In fact, if we take a look at her stats, which we'll do a bit later on, is that her boosted sort of unique is based on how much extra damage you're doing, like extra attack damage that she does boosts the amount of instinct damage that she does. So it could go both ways. She's obviously going to be able to be a draw engine, as you do with most characters in this slot. However, she also has the potential to be very good currently for a DPS character. So it's good to see that we've got something that can be a bit more versatile than just being a draw engine. The other reload that we wanted to look at is the Grand. So with the Fracture arrow, it adds a stack of Fracture, it draws a card, and it does extra attack damage. The Grand arrow, instead of just doing a small amount of damage and adding one stack of Fracture, does a massive amount of extra damage to whoever has the highest HP and then draws a card. So we're losing the Fracture that we would normally be getting with the fractured version of the arrow, and just getting this one big bonk from this arrow. It gives you a chance to kind of look and see, hey, this is where we kind of want to go with this. Now, there are also other options where you can generate 4 regular arrows, create 2 arrows, and if an enemy is defeated, you create 2 more, and that does that up to 5 times a turn. Or at the start of the turn, you simply just create 3 in the draw pile, but it cannot be the target of turn draw. So there's a bit of a drawback with this one specifically. Basically, is if at any point in time you draw it through the start of a turn, it doesn't activate the card, which means now it's a dead arrow if you draw it for turn. Where all the other ones, even if you draw it for turn, it will still activate it. So it's very important that you have the ability to have those arrows go off. Otherwise, they're just kind of dead cards, which combo into something completely different. And right now, I just don't think that that specific epiphany is going to work until we get a chance to see more hands-on with both Arabella and with Olga. So the other card I wanted to talk about is, of course, her unique, which is Vortex Arrow. So Vortex Arrow gives us a very unique draw engine that also does a lot of extra damage based on the total amount of attack cards that were drawn this turn. Now, obviously, multiple arrows leads to multiple boosts. At 60% each, the card can get kind of out of hand pretty quick. Knowing that this is not a card that does extra damage, but does base damage, means that having a higher attack with a higher extra damage means that she's going to be able to kind of bounce back and forth. However, the interesting thought here is that once you have her ego manifested, the card itself grows quite considerably. So at base, it is a unique card that is draw 3, 120% damage to all enemies, 60% damage for each attack card drawn this turn, max 8 cards. When epiphanied, it jumps from draw 3 to draw 4. It jumps to 180% damage and 90% additional damage for each attack card drawn. Now, the cool thing about this is that it doesn't necessarily have to be just her attack cards. It's any attack cards. So this is part of the reason why a lot of her kit and a lot of what is actually going to be done with her is based around other attackers in the party with her. So she is not going to be a standalone ranger like other rangers technically could be. But of course, as all rangers have been in the past, they will all be paired with a partner DPS person as a sub DPS themselves. So it's entirely possible that she has the ability to become a main DPS with somebody else supplementing her. So you could always try like a double ranger build. Obvious choices are Veronica, Selena to a lesser extent, but it's always possible that something like that could work. I'm just not entirely sure the validity and or the possibilities for pushing in on some form of boss mob. Obviously having both Veronica and Hilde means that we now have the capability for both Vanguard and Rearguard for Great Rifts to actually have a solid ranger draw engine outside of utilizing characters like Nia or Cassius, or to a lesser extent like Mika or Tiff. Given that she has the potential to basically take over some of those slots, it's very likely to see a a majority of the farming builds to be more DPS focused, whereas more of the boss fight builds are going to be focused around her card draw. As far as I've seen, and as far as she shows in all of the other cards that she has, such as draw and release with multiple draws as part of the base kit for both the card and for the epiphanies, on top of also having the ability to add draw to her big game ranger upgrade card in a couple of different spaces. It just kind of depends on kind of where you want to go with that. Obviously, if you're going a bit more hard in the paint for drawing, then you're going to epiphany draw on almost every single one of the cards that has it. Even her plasma rain card has active epiphanies that can add an additional draw to it. So it's entirely possible that she can get very draw heavy. But again, I also like to think that there is a world in which having her do damage as well is very much a viable option. Now, of course, when it comes to the equipment that you want for your build, there's a couple of specific pieces that are going to work out quite well. If you're looking for something generic, then obviously going in for just your standard second method is probably going to end up being your best in slot, as obviously she is very focused around extra attack. However, you could also make a argument for going back and grabbing yourself a Trumpet of Revelation if you are going a little bit more hard in the paint for a draw build. As far as her armor is concerned, Remnants of Succession, which is the specific armor that is specific to what she is looking for her just basically almost all of her builds. However, this is specific to the newest Chaos, so you're going to have to run that multiple times to try to get a copy of that. Otherwise, either grabbing a generic copy of Shield of the Watcher or the Reinforced Combat Suit for your draw build, or looking into just getting a Fairy King's Crown as you would normally for your DPS build. As far as your accessory is concerned, the best in slot is going to end up being the Invader Observation Logs. This again comes specifically from the new Chaos. Otherwise, you're probably just going to end up getting limited to just finding yourself yet another Amorphous Cube, as this is going to benefit either the draw or the DPS build, since that boosts everybody's overall damage. Now, of course, things wouldn't be complete without talking about memory fragments. Currently, if you actually are going into the new support growth guide that they have in the game, you will note that it's calling for a 4 and 2 of one of the 2 new sets that actually came out with the patch, which is the Battlefield Evolution set, and then of course a 2-piece of Executioners. With the Battlefield Evolution set, it's going to give her at 4 pieces on extra attack, or whenever an attack card is created in the draw pile, or on draw through an attack card, she gains 1 stack of Evolving Battlefield. Evolving Battlefield grants an additional critical damage buff, stacking up to 3 times. This gives you the chance to sort of look for what it is that she actually wants to do, which is extra attacking, while being able to support through card draw and making multiple attacks from all of her fracture arrows. We also want to make sure that she is looking to prioritize instinct damage percent, critical chance, critical damage, extra attack, and then of course her base attack. Keeping in mind that, as we have always said around here, that if you get extra health, that is never a bad thing. It's not going to be the most appropriate, but it is going to give her an edge when it comes to some of those higher damage fights. Also keep in mind that at the moment, we want to try to do our best to keep her in the newest Chaos. That is where you're going to find her best in slot armor, and in most cases, also her best in slot accessory. Now, as far as team comp is concerned, there are a few different possibilities as far as what you want to do with her. She's going to shine with a secondary DPS in our party. You can also go forward with the other possible interesting choice, which would be Hugo. This gives her the ability to do additional attacks because every single one of those arrow cards is going to trigger some form of additional attack with his extra attacks as well. You are also going to find very, very good synergy with secondary DPSing with either Faye or Yuki as your primary as well. You can also swap in, as we said earlier, either Veronica or Selena as a secondary support to replace your other DPS, as well as running either Cassius and Mia as a secondary card draw, as we've been doing for quite some time. Finally, let's talk about her manifested egos and her potential upgrades. All of her potentials are pretty straightforward. Obviously, we've got our standard 3. Her basic card proficiency gives her plus 20% damage to her standard multi-shot card, which is her basics. Her stat bases gives her boosts to both critical damage and critical chance. Her basic card proficiency at the top is a 5% damage boost to her multi-shot, and if her extra damage stat is at 6% or higher, it adds an additional 5% to that modifier. And her unique stat upgrade at the end is a plus 7% instinct attribute damage boost, and if her extra damage stat is at 6% or higher, it adds an additional 8% to that modifier. As far as her ego manifestations are concerned, E1 is giving her Vortex Arrow the increase draw by 1, 60% damage boost, and change the damage amount for each attack card drawn through an ability to 90%. Her E2 is, at the start of battle, 10% to her critical chance. At the start of the turn or when an enemy is defeated, she gains a stack of a buff called Double Tap. Double Tap says that when a homing arrow is activated, 300% extra attack to the enemy with the lowest health, and then decrease the stacks of Double Tap by 1, and it can be stacked 5 times. E3 changes the weakness damage amount taken by Matrix Effect from 15% to 25%. E4 is Inner Memory that says for each hit an ally performs, you gain 1 stack of Find the Gap. Find the Gap is a buff that says increase the damage amount of Hilde's extra attacks by 5% for each stack, and it caps at 8. Her E5 is her card upgrade stat boost by 3, and her E6 says that when Find the Gap reaches 8 stacks, you gain an additional 15% critical chance to her instinct attribute allies. It also increases the maximum amount of stacks of Zero In from 80 to 100, and at the start of the turn, you will automatically gain 15 stacks. And for each stack of Zero In that she has, she will gain an additional 1% critical damage at a maximum of 45%. And of course, in closing, we're always going to talk about our last couple of things, which is basically just our general overview and, of course, the partner. Her best in slot partner is going to, of course, be Uni, which is the other current banner available at the time, and is going to be easily her best in slot choice. Otherwise, as we like to do around these parts, we build into getting Rosaria big business. Always going to be your best in slot 4-star Ranger partner, just because of the stat increase and the additional draw that she can bring to the table. That being said, Hilde is a, as I said, very unique and very promising new Ranger that can both DPS and support based on what we've currently got and what we're going to expect for the remainder of the season, especially when Arabella and Olga have both dropped. Now, obviously, with the new content in the season for the Desire cards and some other additional things that are going on there, you might be better looking at some more in-depth guides that deal specifically with the Desire mechanic. I'm not going to go over that here because there is way too much to get into the weeds, and it's going to like triple the amount of time that this video would take, and I really don't feel like getting into that. And like I said, there are obviously way better guides and other people that are going to have a much more in-depth look into what Desire is actually going to do and which Desire cards you would want to actually pick up for anybody that you're putting together in a team, be it Hilde or somebody who's already been out. That being said, a lot of people seem to be rating her pretty high as far as her utility and what she can bring to the table. So I'm very excited to see what she's going to do, not just for the current roster of agents, but also for the future of what the season has to offer, as well as what the meta is going to do when it shifts once Arabella and Olga are actually out, seeing as that we're probably going to have to deal with a very specifically unique mechanic in dealing with Anis, the Protoss killer, who will most likely be our big boss in Great Rift. We're going to have to take a peek at seeing exactly how that's going to phase out once she actually comes in soon. I'm not entirely sure the actual release date on that. I'll have to take a peek and see when that's going to be. But when everything arrives, after you've unlocked everything, Anis is going to be a very unique thing to deal with early on. And it's probably going to be something that we're going to see the numbers grow and grow each time the next character in this group releases. So keep an eye on it and see what you guys think. Let me know what you think about Hilde down below in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment as you do, and I will see you guys again in the next release. Bye-bye.